Welcome to the sizzling world of love, lust, and laughs, and more importantly, desire. This is Desire Dialogues. Get ready to dive into an electrifying podcast hosted by yours truly. Have you ever wondered why your love life feels like a lukewarm cup of coffee? Ugh. Fret not. I'm here to sprinkle on some easy, practical advice and solutions to spruce things up. So we'll be diving into the pool of common struggles. Join me while we flip through the pages of love, turn up the heat on passion, and discover the secret sauce to fulfilling a spicy love and sex life. As a professional seller of sex toys since 2013, I ended up seeing that there was a gap when it comes to fulfilled relationships that you can't just really throw sex toys at to repair and enhance, right? I help individuals and couples authentically express themselves for a more harmonious relationship and sex life, whether alone or with a partner or partners, without fear of judgment and shame and old beliefs. So I have a signature program called Relationship Reignition and a kick-ass 30-day program, nice fun couples challenge to help reignite the flames. Each day you'd get a sensual and or sexual activity for each day to go ahead and act upon. So I'm glad you're here. Hit that play button and enjoy. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so kindly for taking your time to have this chat. I'm really excited about learning more from you. And as
Fantastic.
somebody who isn't an expert, I thought it was really important to the community for someone to know more to really be able to share. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, my pleasure, my pleasure. And it's funny because I'm kind of someone who prefers to be a guest than do my own thing, but
Yeah,
I love helping people learn more about BDSM and responsible BDSM. And for those who are looking to get maybe a little more spice, if we're looking at more relationship type of um engagement, you know, Valentine's Day is coming up. Sometimes people want to spice things up. They might see something in a store or something, and exploring know with some knowledge under your belt, I think helps folks be successful in finding the right kind of spice for them.
absolutely. Exploration is so key and can be so much fun creating new trust and experiences, especially when it's time to try new things. I'm really excited to ask quite a few questions. Are you
Great.
ready to dive in, Jennifer?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Heck yes. All right. So, can you tell our listeners the basics of, we'll start with the acronym for BDSM?
Absolutely. So BDSM is kind of a multi-term. So B is the bondage, D is the discipline, S is for sadism, and M is for masochism. People who are involved in BDSM come from all sorts of walks of life, and it doesn't look the same for everyone. As
Mhm.
someone who's been involved in kink communities for over 15 years, it's really important for folks to understand that um, the community itself is diverse, and there's a lot of people who get a lot out of that. And it can look, it can look in a relationship or with a partner all sorts of different ways.
Absolutely. When you say, I believe you said benefits, and what are the benefits of this BDSM situation? What does that provide you?
Um, I think it's a healthy expression of sexuality if done really with an awareness and a knowledge of self. I think you can learn a lot about not only yourself, but how you show up in your relationships as well. There can be a lot of not only personal exploration, intimate exploration, but really exploration as to how you show up in regards to trust, in regards to um, feeling confident, I think one of the things I've personally gained out of my experience in BDSM is being a more confident person, not only in my relationships, because consent is such a huge part of BDSM,
Yes.
but really with others as well, listening, learning how to listen, learning how to communicate, and also learning how to ask for what I want and how to set boundaries. So I think for me at least, and for folks that I've known, it's been a pretty wonderful experience, but again, not without risk or without needing to learn.
Absolutely. And we can touch base on the risk and some safety a little bit later. And I really feel like it is so beautiful that the confidence you gain, it's as if it's really helping people. It steps into like authenticity. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think particularly for folks who are more submissive or bottoms, and I can explain really kind of quickly on what the difference is.
I love that.
Um, yeah, it can feel like you're taking on a lot, but really, in my opinion, the person who is on that submissive or bottom side of a power exchange sets those boundaries and sets those rules because it's ultimately their body that is going to be spanked or will receive whatever the play is. So just a slight difference between bottoms and submissives. And bottom is also used in the LGBTQ community. It's a little bit different. Bottoms are the recipient of the activity. So whether that is, let's say, a spanking
I
or
love a good spanking.
I love a good spanking. Yeah, impact play or bondage. That's the person who's getting tied up or getting spanked. And the top is the person spanking or tying someone up. And that's really more of a physical dynamic, whereas dominance and submission is really more of a mental dynamic. So you can technically be a bottom who is a dominant. And I've seen that in many relationships that I've seen out in the community. But submission, even in itself, is something where you still set boundaries. You
Yeah.
might say, I will do as you will, but setting those boundaries and having a safe word or some process that says, I'm done, you will stop now is really important to have. Um, yeah.
I agree with you. Very much so. And what I've found, which is probably the biggest thing that I really admire about BDSM community and the power dynamics is it is probably the most consensual environment I have ever been in. If it's done properly, right, and with
Mhm.
safety, it is everything is out there. And you have your safe word, you have your ground rules. And when it comes to the word submissive, the submissive is actually quite in control and in a way because that they dictate the yes or the no's or the maybes. Would you mind if I inquire about your safe word and I'll tell you mine?
Sure. And so in my relationships, and I am polyamorous, I
Love
use the stoplight system. So red, yellow, green. And so we may not use a specific safe word, but if I call red, everything stops. So I guess red is my safe word. And that is the safe word that's often used if folks are going out into a play space or an event, a play party. Usually they'll have a house safe word that you may use, and often it's red. What's your
I was
safe
a
word?
That is a fantastic that's a fantastic piece of info. I was curious because I do like that, when you say yellow, you know, things stop for a second and you check in. Like you may not be completely done. So I do like this spectrum with the green, the yellow, the red. And it is a very, common, kind of pretty you know, self-explanatory, and I like that it can be applied in so many settings, and everyone is on board and knows what that means. So thank you
True.
so much.
And
So I
I
love,
just want,
yeah,
yeah, I
no,
just wanted to
please.
add that dominance and tops also can use safe words. And I encourage my dominants or tops, if I am in the submissive space, to use them, because it can be a very emotional engagement. It can be a very physically intense engagement, not only for the submissive, but for the top as well. Someone's asking you to do something that might be totally counterintuitive to your how you were raised, especially if men, male dominants don't hit women, and then here's someone asking you to smack them, consensually, but it can really create some emotional turmoil in some folks new to that type of role. So I always encourage my clients who come to me for coaching, tops can have safe words too, doms can have safe words too, and we listen to them in the same way.
Absolutely. And this emotional experience is such a great place for a growth and like really true self exploration. I'd love to hear more about your coaching and how long you've been helping people in this beautiful role from your life experiences behind the scenes.
Oh, sure. So this role of doing more like personal sex coaching has only been about 2 years, but my background is actually in community health and something called social determinants of health. So things like how do our communities help keep us safe? I have always had an involvement in BDSM community and in sex positive communities, and really started to see where sexual reproductive health had a place in healthcare consulting. I did some consulting work for the Department of Health and found a lot of interest in doing sex coaching, where I don't do as much sex or relationship coaching as BDSM and polyamory coaching. Um, but I do it as the need kind of calls for it as well. But I'm also an older person, and at age 50, well, I'm 51.
You look
But
friggin' fantastic. It's
ew,
all those good spankings and all those oxytocin.
there you go. Exactly. I do have to say, having a healthy sex life, I think, helps me feel confident and feel healthier and take better care of myself too. Um, yeah, but when I hit 50, and this is my personal journey, I had survived 2 heart attacks and decided that I really wanted to live robustly, live deliciously. And part of that was
Ooh.
helping people just love their lives and have fantastic sex and have fantastic and safe BDSM, relationships. And if I can be an example, there's stereotypes out there, right, of people
Oh,
involved in BDSM and
mhm.
people involved in polyamory. Now, if I can come as someone who's 50 plus, who's been doing this since the 90s, and say, you know what, it's it's a it's a safe thing. It can make your relationship stronger, happier, healthier,
Yes.
and let me help you, move towards that. Then I'm living my life.
Exactly. And you're living your experience like I see you. And this will be on a podcast with audio, and it's just you're lit up. You're lit up when you talk about how it affects your life, which would make you an incredible coach for anybody who is looking to step into this with the right guidance and encouragement. And I absolutely am so happy that you're here. And, anybody who is listening, who's looking for that specific, especially help with, polyamory, you want somebody with the right experience and that willingness to help. And I really just, I appreciate you for being who you are and making this sex positive space that's safe to step into. And also your work with the community with sexual reproductive health. Thank you so much. I have a background in human services as well as psychology, and it's a beautiful need bringing these things to light and really advocating for those who aren't or who don't know they need to yet, things like that.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. And I appreciate you coming out here and reaching out to folks and trying to help them live, again, more delicious lives, if you will, and find true intimacy, because there is not having that kind of intimacy is just really magic, and it's special. And it's worth the work.
And I love that you say work. A lot of great things come with a lot of effort and new things. I mean, when you start out on a bike, sometimes you fall over a couple times, but those lessons, they really help you grow. And I love that you can be there, as their training wheels and their helmet, really just showing them the ropes. No pun intended, but that
I was
works,
gonna say
right?
basic knots, maybe, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the basics to start. We're not suspending from the air yet. I
Absolutely.
really just wanted to get a beautiful, backstory here on some basics for our listeners who, may be interested and really truly what it offers. May I ask, who did someone introduce you, or did you see something that interested you in this
I think
lifestyle?
that's a great question. I think my discovery of BDSM and polyamory kind of came along at the same time. I grew up outside of the San Francisco Bay Area,
Mhm.
and during the 80s, and so it was not as stigmatized
Yeah.
as it might be in other parts of the country or other parts of the world. My parents, very traditional. I'm Latina. Grew up in a family that was kind of in a suburb. So I wasn't exposed to it through that, but I was exposed to it through things such as the Rocky Horror Picture Show. um, you know, uh, I was involved in Ren Fair and SCA. It's kind of stereotypical nerdy stuff, but there were stories that were underlined where you had this element of BDSM. I always think about Wonder
Mhm.
Woman myself, and the fact
Ah,
she had her golden lariat, and there have been stories that the creator of Wonder Woman was polyamorous, and there's definitely some BDSM elements, but I just felt myself very attracted to that. And this was
yeah.
pre-internet days, so you couldn't really find community in the same way. I took a break because I had got married and had a daughter.
Mhm.
That marriage unfortunately ended, and in 2010, I jumped back into polyamory and BDSM and found a wealth of new things, things such as munches, which had not really happened, and a munch for folks
Yes,
who
please tell them about the munches. Yes.
munches are non kink focused events, but they are meeting of people who are interested or engaged in kink communities. So one of the things about BDSM is there's often a community where you live, and they have events. You go for coffee. You might go to a game night, but these are people. It's a way of building trust, so that if you do want to engage with somebody in this circle, at least you have some knowledge from other people that this is a person that's trustworthy. And that's true of both sides, because we often look at, the dominant's the one who could really hurt a submissive, but frankly, it's a two-way street. There's a reason we call it power exchange, not power
Yes.
inequity. And
Very, very good. Yes. Thank you for saying that, really.
yeah, and so the idea that the dominant gets everything they want and the submissive just, silently suffers is really not true. That's not my
That sounds like an
experience.
outdated myth, honestly, for everyone who could be really, truly like miseducated or just misled from like that telephone game of what it is. And it's not. And I'm absolutely. So the power exchange, two parties. Absolutely.
And so there is nothing wrong for with a submissive, in particular if they're looking for a dominant, to ask what's in it for me. And I apologize, my cats decided to
No problem. I love it. kitty cats came to join the little pussies.
Yes, always.
Super curious, right?
Yes. But yeah, for power in regards to power exchange, it's okay to ask, what is in this for me? And I think dominance, particularly when you're engaging online, which that's a whole we can get into that. There's, the minute you say you're a submissive, the inbox will explode, and it's might feel flattering to have a lot of guys who are like, you know, get on your knees for me before they even learn your name. But
Yeah.
that is really poor form. You consent to that submissive power exchange with another person. They don't get to choose. It's an agreement. It's a partnership.
Yes.
And while my BDSM life is more of a lifestyle, it's totally okay to have starting and stopping points for when you are submissive. You don't live your life 24/7 as a submissive to everyone. It's really about that relationship.
That
And
is an incredibly beautiful, significant line that you just drew. I've heard many actually ask, okay, so if you have this relationship with your primary partner at home, when does it turn off and on? When does it simmer? And ground rules as well.
yes.
And very importantly, you are not a submissive to everybody. That is just tagline that. I love that, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I used to have a shirt that said, I'm a submissive, not a doormat. And
Yes.
because it's so true. And living with my spouse, who, we have kind of we have a quasi lifestyle arrangement. It There has to be boundaries. A dominant that I knew once said, you have to have a balance, because how does your submissive hold you accountable if you were supposed to take the garbage out and you didn't? You know,
Yes.
there has to be that line of, you don't get to be, dominant is not another word for asshole. Just
Yes. I'm writing that down.
make a
And
shirt.
yeah, and so you mentioned was it quasi lifestyle?
Yeah.
Can you
So
explain
we
that a little bit for our listeners? What that
Sure.
means?
So in many BDSM relationships, there's different spectrums or depths.
Yeah.
So there are people who have full-time master slave relationships.
Mhm.
And in that sense, that person has chosen to give up their agency and license to a degree. You can always rescind it. But the person who is in that master role is really making the decisions and in control of whatever they choose to be. And that can be from what you wear, what you eat. That doesn't work for most folks, myself included. I feel like I need that agency to have a little more say in my life. And so while my spouse and I don't have that strict of a relationship, there are definitely things in our life that I let him take the lead on, and it works for me. But I can always, again, in our life, we can call a safe word, and we do, both of us. I don't want to put this in the BDSM box. This is in the I'm married box, and that's totally okay. Again, I've had experiences working with folks who the guy was the dominant and was, very giving and loving, and I've seen women dominants in the same role, and I've seen both of them who have been like, that's my excuse to treat you like, my personal servant. And if that's not the kind of engagement you want as a submissive, it's totally okay to say, no, I want to do it in my submission is in the bedroom, or my submission stops when it comes to figuring out money or
Yes.
whatever that is. There has to be, it's a lot of you mentioned earlier, it's work, and it is. It can be a lot of work, but it's very rewarding as well. It's worth the work.
I really feel as if, I mean, and absolutely agree with me if you think so, that all these facets of a serious relationship and personal power is talked about. It is, in a way, it is brought up in a way that it needs to be talked about more than it may be focused upon to talk about in a relationship that is not within, that doesn't have all of these agreements. I do absolutely promote relationship agreements,
Mhm.
not usually super sexual. And I really like that you wouldn't think, just from the outside, you wouldn't necessarily think of all these different agreements through so many facets outside of the bedroom. But that's a beauty with power exchange. It's a spectrum, right? And you can choose
Right.
where to fall along onto it, what feels best for you. Do you agree that these this type of power exchange has you talking about things that are truly important?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it brings up a lot within each individual as well, within themselves. How do I show up in this relationship? If I'm showing up in this relationship as mostly dominant because I feel like my partner can't, I can't burden him with this, then that's something we can kind of look at through BDSM. You know, if I'm somebody who tends to work a lot and I'm a do too much, or and so often some of my with dominance that I have, it is literally go to bed, have a nap, I'm bringing you cookies, take care of yourself. While
They
that may
care
not,
for you in such a way, like, just like you mentioned before, what some dominants will say, "Do this, do that," for their personal gain, and then you have these, it's all with love,
yes,
regardless, and then this way is you take care of yourself because it's sometimes, is it helpful and, like, really beneficial for others to tell you when to lay down the torch of power in your everyday life?
right. And that's a big part of it for both for myself and for my partners. We give each other chances to take care of each other. For me, it is an alternate form of caregiving. I am also a top. I don't ever consider myself really a dominant, but I am a top, and I will do that. I have one partner in particular who is just, there's things they love to do, but they don't always feel confident to do it. So I will hold their hand, for lack of a better word, as the dominant. And we walk
Yes.
through this tough thing together. If it's something sexual, if it's something in their personal life, they may say, I want to explore, um, wearing a collar, or I want to explore going out in public with my mistress's name discreetly written on my leg. The,
Yes.
yeah, they're fun things to do. They're exciting
Mhm.
things to do. Um, male supports are kind of a whole different category, in my opinion. They're
Okay.
Yeah, in a relationship, I think it's a little different because you know that person well.
Mm.
But letting male submissives in particular explore their femininity, it doesn't mean you're turning them into a girl, but I mean, if that's something they are interested in doing, whether it's they have their fingernails painted, or they want to explore more gender neutral dressing or whatever, to me, I'm delighted that I can help them and learn more about themselves.
Yeah, and
But
and
it's done,
feel that
yeah,
way with you as, like, their cheerleader and support, as well as their guide. You're right there with them and safety system.
right. And there is the idea of soft dominance, which a lot of folks don't know about, but I truly, that's where my happiness lives, that it's very nurturing, it's very comforting. Now, that doesn't mean it's not without the traditional BDSM trappings of, physical things. but it's still done in a way where it's not degrading or humiliating. And some people are into that, which is not a bad thing whatsoever.
Is it just a
But
different side of the spectrum?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And, you can also be someone who is into heavy humiliation or degradation, and it can still also be done in a very loving or supportive way. One of my most favorite scenes I've ever seen was at an event, and the dominant was bringing the submissive around to these people because it was, community,
Yeah.
and had them tied up and made them listen to compliments about themselves.
Oh my gosh, it warms my heart.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, he'd bring her up, and, we'd say, the good I see in you is this, or what I love about you is this. And she didn't have control but it created something really beautiful. And I've encouraged couples to do that as well. You can tie somebody up, or, have them lay there, sit there and listen to how wonderful they are, how much you love them. Folks with body confidence issues, I've coached. And can I get a little more descriptive? Is this appropriate on
Oh
the
yes,
podcast?
this is an
Okay.
explicit channel, baby. Hit me. Woo-hoo.
Wonderful. So one of my favorite things to do when working with someone with body confidence issues who's in a BDSM relationship is to have their dominant tie them up, chain them up, or whatever, and put them in front of a mirror and have the dominant tell the submissive, this is what I love about your breasts. This is what I love about your belly. This is what I love about your penis. It's power exchange, but it's done in this really beautiful way. I've also encouraged people to masturbate in front of their partner or loved one and say, I love the way that you do this. I love the way that you do that. So again, it's not all black leather whips and chains, you horrible, miserable weasel. You can really just create beautiful intimacy through BDSM.
And it really, just like you said, you're creating these, this intimacy through BDSM, and it can be power used for so many different types of intimacy, like spiritual, like personal development, and then emotional, never mind sexual and physical.
Yeah,
I love the dual masturbation. I love the body worshiping. And I do many of these similar exercises actually without the power plays at hand, actually, with my couples. And it is such a beautiful union. It's a beautiful gift
exactly.
to
And that's how
receive
I
and give power. Yeah.
yeah. And I see that in the power exchange relationships. You love that person enough to invest that trust and that trustworthiness as well. Because when someone is at your feet and
Literally.
offering themselves to you, you want to treat them like a treasure. At least that's my opinion. You'll see people, again, you can do heavy degradation or humiliation with someone and still do it in an incredibly positive and loving way that makes them feel better at the end.
For example, it could be, like my beautiful slut, not you
Yeah,
beautiful slut. There is ways to still have the same impact, without impact play, but there's
right.
still the same way to have it land in a very loving way. I personally adore degradation. I adore being degraded. And I adore licking my partner's feet, and I have my collar over there. And it's
Uh-huh.
not something we really touch base on too much. Is maybe like every third time we have sex, but for me it's then through the day and day. He does remind me, Lauren, why don't you go take a shower? Why don't you take a bath? Here's a glass of wine. These small things that is still this person, using their power to make you enjoy these self-care things to the best. It is such a cool thing. So just thank you so much for all of this. I am just soaking this up like a sponge. I
Yay.
have um I have just a few more questions, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Of course.
All right. So when you do, so for those who may be interested in a play party or
Hmm.
just getting their feet wet, besides reaching out to a coach. Um, there are Facebook groups now, right? Do you need to usually like have an in to know a friend?
Sometimes, but often, you just have to answer questions
Hmm.
to get in. Are you genuinely? And then you're gonna probably have someone keep an eye on you and watch your first few posts, because we're welcoming community, but we're also a community that knows that there's stigma and morality that some people associate with it. And so you also want to find the right group. If you are a queer person, you may find a queer inclusive group much more comfortable than one that is of heterosexual married couples, and of course, vice versa. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, some polyamory groups are BDSM coded as well, but not everybody who's in BDSM is polyamorous or non-monogamous.
Yeah.
And I've seen some BDSM groups coming up for Black and brown folks. And I really love seeing that, because I think traditionally, leather culture in particular tends to skew towards cis, gay white men.
Yeah.
And again, nothing wrong with that, but that may not be the fit for you. Add to that specific like interest that you might have, whether that is puppy play, which is a kind of kink
Yeah.
that someone might be interested in, or you're looking to learn about strap-ons or strap-on play, you can do that too. There are websites out there, there are TikToks, there are all sorts of resources. Please, my recommendation is to always vet those resources. Lauren, you're fantastic, and I think, people would listening to this would probably go to you to talk about it. But there are things out on TikTok, there are things out on Twitter, and there are websites that may have inaccurate or just dangerous information.
It,
And
it
so please
is.
be wary.
Absolutely. And I really thank you for mentioning that. Truly, it is, you know, the miseducation can just, it can make you go into something thinking it's completely different. Or you're turned off by it and it's just this beautiful experience you just didn't know enough about to go in. It is all these stereotypes. I want to tie it back into the kink umbrella. Um,
Yeah,
so I love that, I've been to many play parties, different rooms have different things,
right.
and it's such a cool place to experience. And again, it was the most consensual thing I've ever done. So I was able to, go with friends, and I was able to try a little bit of everything there. It's such a
Oh, yeah.
so fun. And then you have other types of play parties that, you get to decide yes or no what you're into that night. It's not like set rules. It's not like rules for everybody, but it's like so consenting for all different types of kinks as well under one beautiful roof of acceptance.
Very,
And
yeah, absolutely. And I definitely, to your point, recommend, if you have a local play space and they do offer like a kink 101 or something called a
yes,
tasting,
yes.
fantastic to kind of experience what um you might be interested in, both in giving and receiving. So a lot of times it's you receiving, your bottoming, or what we call a, test bottom or demo bottom. But you can always ask, hey, I'd like to learn how to spank properly. I'd
Yes,
like to
it's so
learn how to,
important.
how do you use this flogger, or how do I tie someone up to make sure that I'm tying safely? You might get to learn a basic knot.
Yes, and it's
Um,
always have scissors at hand. Please check their temperature, look at their hands,
yeah,
check their, yes,
yeah,
so much things, and that can be a different podcast. There are so many beautiful
definitely.
ropes that's basic and then so much more advanced. Sorry about that. I
Yeah.
got excited. Please continue.
Oh no, for sure. I love watching rope. I've rope bottomed for people, but it's like not been my primary thing, but I love watching it. But the other thing you brought to mind too was, when you're engaging in BDSM, one consideration is aftercare, and that's something you really need to think about when you think about the whole experience of BDSM is how do you take care of yourselves after? Because BDSM, particularly physical BDSM, will give you feelings of euphoria. You will get feelings of, intense, intense emotion. Some people
Then you
break down
drop.
and
You
cry.
drop
And then,
after.
right. So you get this kind of high, adrenaline high, and then it could be the next day, it could be 2 days out. You feel miserable, you feel down, and you don't really know why. And that's kind of the crash. So having an aftercare process that works for you, and a lot of people directly after the activity will, cuddle. Maybe somebody needs candy or a stuffed animal. As someone who's diabetic, I have to take my blood sugar and make sure that I'm not in a high or a drop, and then medicate appropriately. So, the experience is fun, but the afterglow, if you will, is really magical as well. And you can learn a lot from someone there too.
And finding your appropriate aftercare. You can add
Mm-hmm.
things, leave things out depending on the circumstance. And I've also had many friends and clients that will have like after this play partner, especially if it's a new one, they will literally hand over a piece of paper or text them their aftercare assignments, like, please check in with me in 1 day, 2 days. I have one person that will bring food, to
Mm-hmm.
her submissives during their aftercare week. But that is a very heavy impact
Yeah.
play usually that she's involved in. That's her style, it's her flavor she likes. I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate you mentioning aftercare. It was on my handy list here. So crucially important. And it comes all full circle. You get this beautiful emotional
Mm-hmm.
release and
Yes.
fulfillment. Yes,
And debriefing
absolutely.
too, an opportunity to debrief and go, hey, I really loved when you did this, but next time, please, I don't think I really like that implement, or I really don't like having my hands tied that tight. It can bring up things for people afterwards. I think that's the other piece that's so important, is really that check in to go, this was okay with you, right?
Yeah.
You know, on both ends, because the top may have had issues too. I've
Yeah.
seen submissives who asked for beyond what the boundary is that was set, and the top called a color, or
Yeah.
called a safe word, and he needed the reinforcements that he wasn't the bad guy here for pulling back. He wasn't the bad guy for not giving her what she wanted, even though that was not what they originally negotiated. So it's really learning experience for learning, for validating, hey, this is okay
Yes.
for both of us. Yeah.
I love that post recap. I actually
Uh,
highly recommend this. Like after you go out to dinner, right? You're like,
yeah.
"Oh, that food is great, but the bread was a little dry. Maybe we could order a different appetizer next time. Ask them to bring some crackers and cheese or whatever it may be." But the post sex recap is so vitally important. And I love that you mentioned this, especially in this dynamic, because those needs, I believe, are like they're really highlighted. The things you liked and didn't like, I feel are much more highlighted and focused upon in the BDSM community that
Yeah.
many people outside of it don't maybe think to do this every time. I highly recommend the post sex recap questions like, what did you like that we could enhance upon next time? What did you not like so much? Was this okay with you? And definitely calling out that yellow to check
Yep.
in the midst of it too, if anything seems out of sorts. And I love the
Yeah.
recap.
Yeah. We even use that for relationship stuff. For example, my
Yes.
spouse my spouse made this thing. It's so brilliant. It's called the Wheel of Date Night. And
Ooh,
so we got just one of those, how you get the spinny wheels that have like the Wheel of Fortune? You can get
yes.
blank ones at Amazon.
And fill them in.
And so we filled in, what we wanted for our date nights. And then, because we're both people who are like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? We'd spin in the Wheel of Date Night and do whatever's there. And we do check-ins on that. Hey, was that, did you really like going to that museum? Or, was it too much to be out doing something super athletic?
Mm.
Uh, you know, um, And that way we're just checking in on our relationship and also validating and going, you know what? I got a good one. He makes a wheel of date night and follows through. And so it's really kind of a positive thing, but it is a power exchange too.
It absolutely is. And I like that too, that when you're creating this wheel, you're creating it together.
Oh
And
yeah.
things can be swapped out too as new interests come about, which is very nice. And guess what? Your wheel, didn't mention anything about sexy. You
Yeah.
mentioned you lit up at like the sound of a museum or and then checking in with, was that a little too athletic for you? Like, hey, we don't need to do a hike next time.
Right.
Um, it can be a lot of things. You create this date night together. I have a whole thing I teach about sex menu, appetizers, and dessert.
I love
Things
that.
like
Yeah.
that with my coaching program. I absolutely love it. It is such a unionizing like event. And everybody's into what's there, but you can pick and choose through all the likes. And I believe that as we get more, flavors, I feel like our sex lives to me is like are my when things change throughout my seasons, just like your taste buds change every 7 years, I feel like your
Oh yes.
sexual taste buds change as well as I'm like starting to drool. But yes, I really feel like it is so interesting to both have an input and to keep things, changing with both of your interests in mind, no matter where that lies on the intimacy spectrum. So beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're in a relationship for years and years, it will flow and change. Definitely was much more of a submissive in my younger years, and I've taken my partners that I'm with. I do talk and am somewhat dominant with them, not in my marriage, but I've been enjoying that more than I used to as a younger person. I've learned kind of the value, especially as an older woman, of it's very validating as a dominant to be able to go, I'm using my older woman experience and you love it.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to learn from somebody with experience and this self liberation, sexual liberation that is truly ingrained as you've grown? So since you mentioned different different categories throughout your life, can you tell me what you may feel about the benefits of being submissive and the benefits of being dominant for each person individually or yourself through the different stages of your life?
Sure. I found submission, and I'm somebody in outside of sexuality circles who tends to be a submissive person. If you look at fight, flight, freeze,
And
or fl-
fawn,
and
yes.
I'm a fawner, so it really just naturally fit into my life.
I'm a
And
fawner too, Jennifer.
yeah, I love making people happy and I love making people feel good. There is a kind of jokingly, we call it the praise kink. I'm very much into calling my submissives good boys, good girls. And I love doing that. But I've also found that for some reason that I don't really understand fully, certain people are attracted to me and want to submit to me. And
That
that
is
kind of
really cool.
it blows my mind, honestly, because I don't feel like I'm that person. But anytime I go to something, I go to conferences every once in a while, and one of my partners is definitely more submissive leaning. The honor of getting to be a dominant for that person and support them feels very nourishing to me.
Wow, yes.
Yeah. So, it works really well for that one particular partner because they have challenges as a guy, and especially maybe this person's, very traditionally good looking, um, to have that nurturing female presence as a dominant force. It's hard for him to acknowledge, but when we have it, it's really filling a need for him that makes him ultimately happier. And it makes
Yeah.
me happy too. And it's a lot of fun. I always forget, we're getting to the deep things before for me, BDSM ultimately has to be joyful. and fun, and what it's kind of anti that stereotype of the big mean, you know, leather clad guy with a whips and chains. And
Yeah.
I'm a 4'11" person who wears pink, a lot of pink and fluffy. That's my dominant places.
Yes, your dominant color is pink.
My dominant color is pink, and imagine June Cleaver with a whip, you know.
Heck yes.
There is that kind of 1950s mom stereotype that really speaks to me, because there's a strength in that I really love. And it's
Yes.
also nurturing. So the benefits to that is I get to be a nurturer. I get to be in control. I get to help the people I love by giving them the structure, and the dominance that I'm providing to them gives them release in a way that they crave. And as a submissive, it just allows me to give my heart, and it allows me to get my needs fed of not being in control of everything.
Yeah.
And not having to think so much. To me, if I can stop thinking, it's a good place for me to be. And it's very freeing, and at the same time I get to give pleasure, and that's my happy place, you know.
Yeah.
As a
And
fawner.
yes, as a fawner. And it really is what I'm really getting out of this is, your face lit up while describing both roles. And you describe nourish in each one. And it's this, to me now, I'm looking at it like it's this, you're both holding like coffee cups, and the people that are coming to you, they may know that your little bit of power can fill their cup up to exactly where they need it without you needing to say it. And I find this, this power exchange is like nourishment back and forth and back and forth, and discussing what those are is just such a beautiful, beautiful lifestyle, whether it's full time, part time, or,
Right.
weekend warriors. So, oh, I
Weekend
love
warriors
it.
in the bedroom, you know. It's our anniversary, we want to spice things up. It's Valentine's Day.
Hmm.
Always good to explore, and it's always good to communicate. You become stronger together that way.
It builds a lot of trust. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yep.
Like in yourself as well as another. And that's a very strengthening component.
For
Absolutely.
sure. And it's a good lesson learned, because if you don't speak up for yourself, there can be absolute consequences that are, frankly, you know, you have yourself to hold responsible, and you get to learn from the experience. If you don't say for example, if you don't use your safe word because you
Or
don't
safe
want to
color.
disappoint your dominant,
Hmm.
that's a whole issue you need to look at in the bigger sense of the word. Why
Yeah.
would you let someone, why would you not set a boundary so that person's knowledgeable so they don't cross it? Why won't
And
you let,
yeah.
yeah, why
eh,
don't you let people know when you're in pain? There's just
eh,
a lot of inner work that can be opened up through BDSM.
Absolutely. That was what I was hoping to get to. And
Mhm.
it really is. It's this insider insight that is being brought up to look at, to grow with. And that is what I've seen with my BDSM friends in the community, how much you grow personally as well as with others as primary partners, and then secondary, thirdly, and then the whole community as a whole. And I just thank you so much, Jennifer. Is there anything you would like to say to our listeners who are curious about BDSM?
Sure. I would say for your listeners that BDSM is a fantastic area to explore. Exploring it safely is absolutely essential. Communication, self-reflection, and honesty are really big foundational pieces that you can use and grow in, should you choose to engage in BDSM. And do your research. Please make sure that you look at what BDSM is, and really think about how can it nourish you? How can it serve you? and how can it serve your partner, and really be on the same page. It can be a wonderful thing, but it can also, if it's not your, if it doesn't light your fire or sparkle your fireworks, then you
Yeah,
absolutely don't, then move on, and now but
exactly.
be safe, and be intentional when playing in the BDSM world.
Intention is very big, and as well as exploration. I had an intention for this podcast to truly bring some topics and knowledge from your expertise, from somebody who does coach others on this BDSM path and polyamorous path. And I just thank you for putting out this with me with the intention that people can learn about the benefits and some safety, and also just I hopefully encourage, and I thank you so much for your time sexually empowering all of our listeners with their ears and hopefully their genitals and whatever lights their fire, whatever part of your body, your soul will be nourished by BDSM and this lifestyle and exploration. We both truly encourage you, and if you need to reach out and you would like some support, we're both here for you. So all of Jennifer's info will be in the show notes. And I'm going to look around, ask some friends about some possible Facebook groups that are safe. And, if anybody needs to take that out, just like, let's try not to Google. Ask an expert, right? I
Yes,
think that's good.
great idea.
Thank you kindly, Jennifer. We will definitely talk about a different interview topic, whether we go into BDSM a bit more or some other topics of your expertise. I so much gratitude for being here with me and sharing this space. I appreciate you with
And
so
I
much love.
appreciate you. No, I wish you and your listeners a delicious, wonderful sex life.
Chef's kiss. Mwah. All right. Thanks so much again for listening. I would love it if you follow and subscribe to this podcast. It actually helps the podcast programs and platforms be able to recognize the sexuality type of podcasts. They're not necessarily easily searchable, so it would really help other listeners like you be able to get some really fun stuff in between their ears. So feel free to share it with a friend if you think they'd be into this too and learning more about their body, desire, and things to enhance their relationships with themselves or others. Also, all of my information to connect on all the socials, to order yourself some sex toys, are all in the link in the podcast description. Thanks so much, guys. Don't forget, pleasure is your birthright, and you don't have to ask permission.